30 minutes. That's all the time the commanding officer aboard the supercarrier USS Carl Vinson has to handle an impossible situation. A Russian reconnaissance plane is surveying them, but a more deadly threat has just emerged, and one wrong decision could spark a new world war. How did the Pentagon respond to this escalation? October 25, 2025. The story doesn't begin on the bridge of a $13 billion ship. It begins at 9:30 a.m. in a cramped space dozens of miles away, flying at an altitude of 25,000 feet. Inside the cockpit of an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, the atmosphere was tense and the focus intense. Green dots appeared on the radar screen representing identified civilian targets in the area of responsibility in the Arabian Sea. The controller's job was to monitor, detect, and report any unusual signals or unidentified targets. And then it appeared. An unidentified bright signal trail was detected at the edge of the screen. It was unlike the other bright dots. The identification friend or foe IFF system automatically sent a query signal. Silence, no response. The system did not detect any Mode S transponder codes or civilian ADS-B signals from that direction. It was flying low, only about 500 feet above the sea surface. A dangerous altitude for commercial aircraft, but perfect for hiding below the radar horizon. Its speed remained steady, 250 knots per hour. But the most alarming factor was its vector, a nearly perfect, unchanging straight line heading southwest directly toward the location of Carrier Strike Group 1. Estimated time to reach the Vinson less than 12 minutes. Distance 50 knots and closing. On the tactical screen, a line flashed, "Unknown contact, classification pending." The situation had shifted from surveillance to alert. Combat procedures commenced. Data collected from the Hawkeye is quickly encoded and transmitted via the Link 16 network, a digital information channel connecting all U.S. Navy assets in the area. The unidentified blip immediately appears on the screen of the Tactical Action Officer TAO inside the Combat Information Center CIC aboard the USS Carl Vinson. The CIC is the brain and central nervous system of an entire floating city. Dozens of sailors sit in front of display screens surrounded by a cold atmosphere filled only with the sounds of machinery and short, decisive commands. Here, thanks to Cooperative Engagement Capability (CEC), all the powerful data from the 4 Arleigh Burke-class escort destroyers and the cruiser USS Princeton is consolidated. The entire battle group now not only sees with one eye, but also thinks with one collective brain. Based on data on radar reflection signals, speed, and flight altitude, the Aegis Baseline 10 combat system identified the target as a Russian reconnaissance aircraft, the Ilyushin Il-38 May, a 4-engine propeller reconnaissance aircraft, a durable design from the Cold War era. But this is no relic. It was upgraded in 2023 and carries the Novella NV-1 radar and electronic intelligence collection system. Its mission is not to attack, but to gather information. It operates as a giant spy plane, designed to hover just outside our firing range for hours, collecting and recording all electronic signals from the combat group. At 9:17 a.m. local time, the order came from TAO, the voice booming in the CIC. "Scramble 2 Hornets, intercept and escort. Rules of engagement are standard." The kill chain had been activated. The first layer of response, the tangible deterrent, began. On the 333-meter deck of the USS Vinson, 2 FA-18E Super Hornets were positioned on the EMAL's electromagnetic catapult. In just a few seconds, the pilots completed their final checks. With a powerful flick of the control stick, the 29-ton aircraft accelerated from 0 to over 240 km/h in less than 5 seconds. They shot up into the sky quickly, reaching Mach 1.2, turning into 2 small dots racing towards the intruder. The 2 FA-18E Super Hornets were the air police. They were not stealth assassins, but clear embodiments of American power and presence. From a distance of 5 nautical miles, the pilots visually confirmed via the ATF-LAR electro-optical targeting system it was indeed an Il-38. Their mission was to send a silent message. They did not lock their radar onto the target. Instead, they established a safe escort formation flying parallel to the Il-38 at a distance of 2 nautical miles. Then, one of the 2 pilots tilted the control stick, and the Super Hornet also tilted its wings. This was the rock wing signal, a message understood by pilots worldwide. "We see you. You are being monitored. Leave this area." The Russian crew on the Il-38 certainly saw them, but the 4-engine aircraft remained steadfast on its course. Perhaps they were testing the Pentagon's patience. Or perhaps they were feeling dangerously confident, thinking they had forced the US to show its hand. But the problem was, they couldn't have been more wrong, because the second layer of response had been in place for a long time. Dozens of miles away, flying at a different altitude, were two F-35C Lightning IIs. These are the naval version of the fifth-generation fighter. Their radar cross-section, only about 0.001 square meters, made them nearly invisible to the Il-38's radar. More importantly, they were operating in full stealth mode. Their radars were off. All electronic emission systems were silent. So, how did they see the Russian aircraft precise tracking data on the Il-38, collected by the E-2D Hawkeye 200 nautical miles away, was transmitted directly to the F-35C's cockpit via Link 16? Inside the F-35C's cockpit, there was no chaos, only the eerie silence of a supreme predator. On the display screen in his $400,000 helmet, the F-35C pilot saw a red icon marking the Il-38, as if he were locking onto it with his own radar. The professional pilots activate the Distributed Active Sensing DAS system, a 360-degree sensor network, which begins recording all electronic waves and thermal signals from the enemy's Novella NV-1 system. The intelligence hunter has become the hunted. The confrontation was now completely asymmetrical. The Russians thought they were gathering intelligence, but in reality, every frequency emitted by the Novella NV-1 system was being recorded with absolute fidelity. The confrontation could have ended quietly there, but suddenly the entire rules of the game changed. At 9:28 a.m., inside the CIC of the USS Princeton cruiser, the concentrated silence was broken by
"Vampire, vampire, vampire!"
That was the naval code for an anti-ship missile approaching. The signal appeared suddenly on the radar screen without any warning. It was not like the large, slow-flying Il-38. This was something completely different, a fast-moving object traveling at Mach 0.9. And it was flying extremely low, just 50 feet above the sea surface to avoid detection, a classic attack trajectory. What was it? A KH-35U cruise missile launched from a hidden submarine. A Zala Lancet suicide attack drone launched from a disguised surface vessel. There was no time to determine. It was a threat hurtling toward them, and it would reach its target in less than 2 minutes. The situation suddenly became extremely complicated. The Ilyushin Il-38 reconnaissance aircraft, which had been the original target, was now flying right between the U.S. fleet and the incoming missile. To shoot down the missile, they risked hitting the Russian aircraft. This could be a calculated trap designed to force the U.S. military to hesitate at the decisive moment. There was no room for hesitation. The Aegis Baseline 10 combat system began its work. Integrated with artificial intelligence, this system did not simply track targets. It evaluated, analyzed, and prioritized them in milliseconds. It calculates millions of variables, speed trajectory radar characteristics of the Vampire, instantly identifying the Vampire threat as one that must be neutralized immediately. Teo's decision was made almost instantly, echoing through the CIC.
"Aegis engaged. Target designation Sierra 2. Intercept vector 270. Fire 1.
The kill chain entered its final phase. Within 2 seconds, the AN-SPY-6 radar on the Princeton locked onto the Vampire target. Its radar beam was so powerful it could track over 100 targets simultaneously. 5 seconds later, target tracking data was instantly shared via Link 16, ensuring that every ship in the fleet saw exactly what the Princeton saw. 8 seconds later, a hatch of the MQ-41 vertical launch system on the Princeton's deck opened. By the 9th second, a Standard Missile 2 SM-2 Block 4 is launched. A column of fire and smoke erupts, propelling the $2 million missile skyward. Its solid-fuel rocket motor roars, accelerating it to Mach 3.5. The SM-2 missile doesn't simply fly along a predetermined trajectory. It hunts. It continuously receives mid-course updates from the SPY-6 radar, adjusting its flight path with small control fins with absolute precision. As it nears the target area, its semi-active radar seeker automatically activates. It charges straight toward the target with a single purpose. At a distance of 20 nautical miles from the fleet, there was a deafening explosion. An orange fireball, 10,000 degrees Kelvin, erupted on the surface of the sea. The missile's proximity fuse activated a fragmentation warhead weighing hundreds of pounds to destroy the target. It was a perfect interception. The 10-person crew aboard the Russian Il-38 witnessed it all. From their cockpit, they saw a plume of smoke rise from the American cruiser. And just seconds later, they saw the explosion on the horizon. Not a word was spoken over the radio, but the message was sent clearer than any warning. The deterrence was demonstrated not with words, but with a controlled, precise, and overwhelming act of violence. The silence on Russian communication channels afterward was almost absolute. About 10 minutes passed. Then, at a distance of 100 nautical miles, the large Il-38 slowly tilted its wings, made a wide turn, and began flying northeast. It was a professional retreat. At 9:30 a.m. local time, the U.S. mission was over. The Russian reconnaissance aircraft abandoned their mission and began flying back to base. Victory that day was not measured by downed aircraft. It was defined by absolute control of the information and decision chain. It was defined by the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. Carrier Strike Group 1 completed that entire loop in a matter of seconds. From the moment the strange blip appeared on the Hawkeye's screen to the moment the fireball exploded over the sea, only 90 seconds had passed. The enemy hadn't even completed the Orient step, and the final counterattack, the intelligence-gathering coup de grace, was executed silently. Russia came to learn about us, but in the end, they handed us a detailed map of the heart and mind of their premier reconnaissance asset. No shots rang out from the deck of the Vinson. No air battle took place, but the message sent to Moscow was stronger than any missile. In 2025, the U.S. Navy doesn't just deter, we dominate. We dominate the battlefield with information, with networks, and with the professionalism of over 7,500 people who ensure that when a shadow appears on the radar screen, it faces a symphony of steel, silicon, and iron will. This is the story of the Shadow Over Vinson, the power of America in motion. If you're proud of the technology and professionalism of the U.S. Navy, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel to follow our weekly kill chain analyses. In the next episode, we'll discuss the Aegis system versus hypersonic missiles. And comment below if you were a tactical action officer, what decision would you make?